Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dana and thanks for being here. If you are new, welcome. Whoa. If you're not, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a really exciting video. I have been planning, it's kind of a two-parter, so this is part one and I've been planning it for a while, so I'm very excited to get into it and I hope you guys do enjoy it. If you do enjoy it while you're watching, give it a big old like, consider subscribing, and we're just going to jump in because I've got a lot to cover. So, if you could not tell from the title, I'm talking about skin tints with sunscreen. So, some people love when a product has sunscreen, like a foundation or a skin tint. Some people hate it. This video is for those of you who love it. And I just want to preface this video, I have another one coming, but this is not inclusive of every skin tint on the market. I have a lot, like a lot, almost all of the ones from Sephora. But I do not have every single one from the drugstore. Those are just, it's like uncountable numbers. So I'm doing my best with what I have. I still think it's a lot. So just consider that, like, if I don't have one included, it doesn't mean I just left it out. It's just probably just because I don't have it. So I will say that in both videos, just so you know. But otherwise, we're going to get into it. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be putting it on my face, each skin tint. I'm going to be talking through all of, like, the specs of it and kind of the pros, the cons, how it wears, what it looks like. I'm going to be going in terms of coverage. So I'll start at the lightest and go kind of to the medium one. Now, this video is all about light coverage, so we're not going to get super high. Maybe we'll get to about a medium. In my second video, I'm going to be doing higher coverage, so we'll probably start at like the light and then go up to full, maybe? We'll see. So, also, these are, you know, it kind of depends when I'm putting it on. I'm going to be applying one side with my fingers, my hand, and then one side with a brush. I find that for most skin tints, if you use a sponge, especially for these lighter coverage ones, it's going to soak up everything. It's just not the best delivery. So I'm not going to be using a sponge. I will use a sponge just to tap out any streaks or anything. That's pretty much how I do it. But like I said, I'll just be doing hands on one side, brush on the other. Let's see, what else do I have to cover? Let's see. I will also be applying a moisturizer. I'll probably be using this Dr. Brandt. This is a new one, Icy Gel Moisturizer. It's a very light kind of water cream moisturizer. Or I might switch into the Bioma because I'm kind of through the Dr. Brandt one. Both of those moisturizers are very light, and it's just so that my skin survives this day of putting 8 different skin tints on my face. But that's kind of the basics of it. Also, my skin right now is very normal. I don't have a lot of dry spots. I don't have any oily. Sometimes it gets combo if it's warmer out. It's the middle of winter, so it's not super warm out, but that's where we're starting at. So, all that said, now let's get into it. I will timestamp every single one so you can kind of click to see what you want, and let's get going. First up, we have the lightest of the light coverages. This is with SPF now. Remember, there are lighter skin tints, but they don't have SPF. This is the Rare Beauty. So this is the Positive Light Tinted Moisturizer by Rare Beauty, obviously. It's got an SPF of 20, and it comes in 33 shades. I would say the shade range is pretty decent, but I would like to see maybe a little bit larger, kind of a range. I feel like a lot of the shades in the beginning, the light and the medium, are there, and then kind of the darker skin tones are not necessarily represented. But it is a very sheer coverage skin tint, so you can get quite a bit of flexibility through each shade. This one is said to be a tinted moisturizer that immediately blurs skin with glowy light to medium coverage while hydrating and protecting skin from the sun. So my thing about it is I don't see really any blurring. I do find that it's one of the more light, sheer to light coverages. I don't think you can really build it up to medium. I have tried and it just doesn't look great. Now, if we're taking a look at my face, this is the side I use the brush and this is the side with my hand. They look pretty similar to me. It's kind of what you prefer. I would say that with a brush, it's just a little bit easier and you can get a little bit more coverage, but with the hand, it's not bad at all. And I do like the fact that this skin tint doesn't feel overly glowy. You can definitely make it more glowy just by adding a thicker moisturizer, glowier moisturizer or primer underneath, but it's not anything that's too overwhelming. I do find that I get a little bit of dry patches. It's quite hard to see, but under my eye, I don't know what's going on. I have like a little bit of a dry patch and it's definitely clinging to that. Otherwise, it doesn't look bad in other spots. And the thing I do like about this tint kind of in comparison to a lot of other tints, is it feels very kind of dried down. It doesn't feel super tacky, it doesn't feel like it's gonna move. So if that's something that's important to you, it's definitely a good thing. I think that this tint is probably not best for people with super dry skin. I think it's probably better for people with normal to oily skin, just because of that kind of setting down. How I said it kind of clings to some dry patches, and just the overall kind of finish of it. But one other thing I wanted to talk about with this one is I had a very, very hard time finding my shade, and I still don't love this shade. It feels a little like jaundicey on me, so like a little yellow, just not a great shade. And that's just because I just couldn't find a great match, but I can make it work, especially when I'm a little bit paler. So this is the close-up of what it looks like. Next up, we have the Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue. I have cleaned off my brush. I have a color swatch here, so I will clean it off after each application, by the way. So the Bare Minerals comes in 20 shades. Definitely not enough shades in my opinion, especially in the deeper shade range. And like I said, it retails for $37. This one says that it's a clean, multitasking tinted moisturizer that combines hydrating skincare benefits with naturally radiant sheer to light coverage and SPF 30. So while the Bare Minerals had SPF 20, this one does have a higher SPF for it. By the way, I should mention that the Rare Beauty retails for $30. You get 1 fluid ounce, and I have the shade 24N. So for the Bare Minerals, this retails for $37 for the full one. They also have the mini size, which is what I have, and that's $22. So it's actually pretty pricey even for this mini size. This is 15 milliliters or 0.5 fluid ounces. So this one I would actually say is a little bit sheerer than the Rare Beauty one, but it kind of, I think the difference is that the shade for the Rare Beauty one is kind of off for me, whereas this shade is pretty perfect for me. This one does have like this interesting gel consistency, which is really nice, and I feel like it goes on more smoothly than the Rare Beauty one. Even though I just applied the Rare Beauty one, I had that like patching under my eye. I do not have that at all with the Bare Minerals one. Now that's also because it is such light coverage, so it's just not going to cling as much because you are kind of just shearing out the coverage. This one definitely feels a bit tackier, and it's really like I can't emphasize enough that this is going to be for the sheerest of sheer days where you just want to wash a color. If you want to cancel out any redness or blemishes, you're probably going to need to go back in with a concealer or something else, but this is kind of what it looks like overall. And I would say that this one has a more radiant finish, not super glowy, but a very nice kind of natural radiance to it. This one's definitely, I think, a little bit more catered to people with drier skin, but I think it could wear beautifully on all skin types, definitely on normal, like my skin is normal, and on oily skin, I think it would be fine. You would just probably need to powder, but I think that would be pretty standard. So if I'm going to choose over the two sheerest of coverages that we have here, I'm going to choose the Bare Minerals over the Rare Beauty. I think this one is overpriced for what it is. It doesn't perform well. I do like that it sets down, but I just like the look of the Bare Minerals better. Next up, we have the Shiseido Synchro Skin Self-Refreshing Tint. So the Shiseido Synchro Skin Tint retails for $43. You get your typical 30 milliliters or 1 fluid ounce. This one only comes in 12 shades, and I wouldn't say that the shade range is great, and I do find that the shade runs quite orange on me. It's definitely not my favorite of the shades of all of these. This one says, a skin tint formulated with hyaluronic acid that provide up to 24 hours of hydration, light coverage, and a fresh, natural looking finish that lasts. So it is light coverage with a natural finish, which I would definitely agree with. What you noticed if you were watching when I applied it with my hands, it gets like this weird separation when you apply it with your hands. I don't see that with the brush, and it doesn't have any streaks when I apply it with the brush, but with my hands it's just this weird, it's almost like the MAC Face and Body a little bit, but not as good. And so you really have to rub it in, and I find that if you apply a little bit more, like a second layer, you do have to wait a little bit, otherwise it removes coverage. So it's definitely not my favorite when applying with my hands. I do find like it's just a little streaky, it's just a little patchy. It just doesn't look as great. I think the brush for this one is definitely the preferred method. And then you can go in like I always do with a sponge and just make sure everything is kind of smoothed out. So I have the shade Light 235 in this. I don't think that the shade is great at all, but also this was the only one that really worked for me. And I do think out of all of the 4 that I've tried, this one actually has one of the better staying powers. There's something about the Shiseido like technology in it that really does kind of last, because I've definitely worn this on really hot, humid days and I'm like, there's no way this has pretty sheer coverage. It's just gonna like slide off my face, but it does tend to last. I'm not saying that it's going to be exactly where you put it at the end of the day, but I think if that's one of the like most important things to you, this one out of the 4 that I've already gone over is probably one of the better ones. Now, I kind of always review the Shiseido with the Nars ones because these are very similar. In terms of coverage, if you're looking for a more sheer one, definitely go with the Shiseido. The Nars one has a little bit more coverage. You can definitely build it up. The Shiseido, like I said, it's just not the easiest to build onto itself. You could definitely put concealer on over it, but I would say this one is a very good light coverage one. But it definitely looks very natural. It looks very healthy on my skin, but it's just not my favorite skin, or it's not my favorite tone, so I just don't wear it that often. Next up, we have Nars Pure Radiant Tinted Moisturizer. Nars Pure Radiant Tinted Moisturizer. This is SPF 30 and it retails for $46, so it is one of the more expensive ones out there. We have 16 shades in this, which is not as many as some of the others, and I would definitely say that the shade range tends to veer more toward the light and fair side than the deep and dark. This one says it's a lightweight tinted moisturizer that hydrates and smooths skin while brightening with vitamin C and protecting with SPF 30. It also is a light coverage. They do say that. I would agree with that. I wouldn't say that it's sheer. It's definitely a little bit toward the lighter side and with a radiant finish, which I would also agree with. I would say you could apply it with a sponge as well, but you're gonna get more of a sheer coverage. For me, I do like it with a brush, and I think it looks almost a little bit more natural with my fingers, but you can build it up with either one and kind of cover any blemishes or redness that you might have. This one, like the name suggests, it's more of a radiant finish, so I think this is going to be better suited to people with drier skin. I think it's a nice amount of coverage with also that radiant finish that really just makes it look like natural skin, but giving you a little bit more coverage than the first 2 that I covered. In terms of dry down, this one is pretty similar to the Bare Minerals and pretty standard for a skin tint. It doesn't feel like it ever really sets down. So if you are somebody who would like it to set down a bit more, like for me, I would always need to powder my nose because I'm always blowing my nose or running, my nose is running. But if you are somebody that needs to powder certain areas, you can do that because it's just not going to set down as much. So far, the one that has set down the most is the Rare Beauty, while these next 2 have been pretty standard for skin tints. I do think so far, out of the 3 that I've covered, these 2 also look the most natural. And again, I think the Rare Beauty, it's very hard for me to kind of say that it looks natural just because I don't like the shade. But unfortunately, there really is no other shade that matches me. I have tried in store many times, so it's kind of a downfall of it. And I think it will look natural just because it's such sheer coverage. But these 2 are definitely very natural and are going to look pretty much like skin. Next up, we have the Waso by Shiseido. This is the Shikulime Color Control Oil-Free Moisturizer. Okay, so this is actually a moisturizer, but I really think of it as a tinted moisturizer because obviously it has quite a bit of a tint. It retails for $36 and it only comes in this one shade. It is SPF 30 and it does say that it's supposed to be oil-free color control, which I'm not quite sure what that means. Like, I don't know what color control means, but it says it's an oil-free tinted moisturizer that adapts to your natural skin tone, blurs imperfection, and protects against UV rays. So they say that this one is a lightweight cream and it doesn't really say what the finish is because it is really, I think of it kind of like a moisturizer more than any of the other skin tints or tinted moisturizers. This one has the feel of a moisturizer. I do not like applying it with a brush. I did it just because that's what we're doing in this video, but I would highly recommend just using your hands, thinking of it as a moisturizer. But you see that there is quite a bit of coverage, and I think that this is going to be one of those ones that it's really, really good for those of you with dry skin. But my concern is the color. So can you see the difference between my face and my neck? I have like a light medium skin type, and I have somewhat olivey complexion, but I also have a neutral undertone, and this just doesn't work for me almost unless I'm like very, very tan. So half of the year when I am tan in the summer, I don't need this much moisture on my face, so it's just not really something I ever reach for, even though I really, really want to like it. It definitely has more of a radiant finish, but like I said, it is a moisturizer kind of, so that's why you're gonna get that. It does say that it's supposed to blur, and while I see that a little bit over around like my cheek area, I do think that because of the radiance, it kind of highlights any texture or pores that you may have. Well, so it's kind of like a little bit of a confusion for me at that point. But I think the reviews on Sephora are very confusing because a lot of people are saying that like, this is such light coverage, it's a great moisturizer. And while I agree that it has coverage, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily light. I think this is more like a light medium that you can actually build up. But because of the tone of it, it really makes you look like you have a little bit more makeup on than I would prefer. Like if this came in different shades, like a light, a medium, and a dark, then I think I could work with it more. But because it just has this one that's supposed to be like color adjusting shade, it doesn't really work for me. But it does feel super comfortable on your skin. And I don't necessarily think that it's super long lasting, but I also don't think that it was intended to be like your sole makeup. I see a lot of people using it as a moisturizer before they put makeup on. So if you are looking for more coverage, you could use it that way, but it's just not something I reach for. So I can't really give it a huge endorsement just because of the shade and it not working with my skin tone that well. So this is what it looks like. Next up, we have the Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer. So this is the Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer, Natural Skin Perfector Broad Spectrum SPF 30. It retails for $53. I have the shade 3C1 Fawn. To be fair, it's a little bit tan for me, and I probably could go down to a lighter shade. As far as shades, we have 20 shades, and this also comes in a mini size, which I would highly recommend. And they also make the tinted moisturizer in 3 different kinds now. So they have the tinted moisturizer, they have the oil-free, and then they have the illuminator one. And most of those, except for the illuminator, do come with a mini size as well. So this is the best-selling tinted moisturizer. I didn't say that, the website did. With a new and improved formula infused with skincare benefits for up to 24 hours hydration and SPF 30. It says it has a light coverage with natural finish. And I would agree with both of those, although I think that the coverage is a little bit more light medium. And I think you can sheer it out if you use maybe a sponge or just a lot less. And you can also build it up really easily. So if you notice while I was applying it, I think this one is hands down the easiest to apply. It just goes on like a dream. It's just very hard to mess it up. And I feel like if you ever are just looking for that perfect tinted moisturizer, one of the 3 versions of it from Laura Mercier, it makes it look like skin. It doesn't look too cakey ever. It goes on very easily. And I think it does with 20 shades. You can typically find a shade that matches you. What I love about it is it looks 100% like skin. Now, I need a shade that's lighter because I can see I didn't blend it out all the way down my neck, but I can see like the difference between my neck and my face. So I probably should just go back and get a lighter shade. But other than that, I feel like you wouldn't know that I have makeup on. It does have a little bit of a radiant finish, but it's not too much. And if you do have more oily skin, you can just put a little bit of powder. But I think this original formula could work for all skin types. This one is hands down one of my favorites. It's just so flexible. Like I said, if you want lighter coverage, just go in with a little bit less or go in with a damp sponge. If you want more, you can build it up. As far as wear for it, I do think you can get pretty good wear. It's not gonna be like a long-lasting foundation, but like I said, I wore this in August on my wedding day in North Carolina, and it lasted pretty well, and I didn't necessarily powder it to death. So I think you are gonna have one of the more kind of versatile and flexible skin tints with this one, and I just always recommend it. Next up, we have the Chanel Vitalumière Aqua. This is the Vitalumière Aqua Ultralight Skin Perfecting Sunscreen Makeup Broad Spectrum SPF 15 by Chanel. It retails for $55 on Ulta. It also retails for $65 on Chanel, so I would highly recommend get those Ulta points and get it at Ulta if you're looking into it. It has 17 shades, and I am the shade 22 Beige Rose. I tend to be either a 22 Beige Rose or a 32 Beige Rose in the Chanel shades, and this one is definitely a little bit lighter on me, but I actually kind of prefer a little bit of a lighter shade, just because if I want to, then I can use bronzer or anything else, and it just kind of suits my skin tone a little bit better. So this says, a light to medium coverage liquid foundation that creates a refreshed, natural looking glow. I think there is this subtle glow to it, but I wouldn't say that this one is one of the glowier of the skin tints that I've tried out, but I actually really love the finish. This finish has this velvety, soft, matte kind of feel, and you can see a glow to it, but it's not overwhelming, so it kind of just looks like you're radiating, which I think is kind of what we're all looking for. They also say that it has mineral powders and light reflecting particles, which is probably how you get that kind of luminous but matte look to it. And then of course the SPF 15, which is not really that much, but it's there. It does have your typical Chanel scent. Most of the others don't really have a scent. This one has an added fragrance. I love the Chanel scent, but if you don't like fragrances, maybe kind of steer away from it, but it's not too overwhelming either. This one feels so lightweight on my face. It feels like I've just put like feathers or like, I don't know, like something very nice and like cushiony on my face. It dries down so you're not like really feeling much. Of course, if you do put a dewier sunscreen or a moisturizer, you can kind of build up that glow. But this one really, it's a tinted moisturizer, but it kind of has the feel of a foundation. I absolutely adore this stuff. I probably don't use it enough, but I do think, especially after making this video, I'm going to be reaching for a few of these more and more, and this one being one of them. I forgot to mention with the Chanel, I think this one is best for normal to oily skin. I do think if you have dry skin, you can absolutely use it. I would just load up on moisturizer because it does dry down a little bit more matte than some of the others I've tried out. But I do think you can get away with it if you have drier skin, if you do the proper skin prep. So that's what I wanted to say about this one. So this is what it looks like. And again, like I could wear this all day. The wear time is very good just because it does set down a little bit more and it just feels like your second skin. Next up, we have the Sugar Rush Skin Treat. So this is Skin Treat Poreless Tinted Moisturizer. It's by Sugar Rush, but Sugar Rush is actually by Tarte, and you can find this at Ulta, which is where I picked it up. It comes in two different sizes. This is the smaller size. It's only 10 milliliters or 0.33 fluid ounces. The full size, which is your standard 1 ounce, comes in 11 shades and retails for $35. But you can pick this one up kind of to test it out if you're interested in that. I have the shade Light, and it's actually a pretty decent shade on me. It's definitely my more like winter light shade, but I have no problem with that. Okay, so what they say about this, it's medium buildable coverage, natural matte finish, which I 100% agree with. This is, out of all of the skin tints that I've been trying today, this is really the only true matte one. It doesn't have any glow to it, unlike the Chanel one where you have this kind of like lit from within glow. The Sugar Rush one is 100% matte. It has a kind of unique whipped formula, they say, and texture, an oil-free formula that helps keep shine under control. It's also SPF 20, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Now, this one is actually pretty surprising. I was not expecting to like this one as much as I do. If you don't like matte, if you have very dry skin, you probably just don't try this. Like, it is very matte, it dries down to the touch, but if you have dry patches, you're probably gonna see them. Depending on if you have certain texture on your skin, you might see that more with this one as well. I would say that this one is absolutely for those of you with oily skin. If you have more normal skin, you can absolutely wear it. And if you have dry skin, you can try wearing it if you want that matte finish. I would just, again, recommend that you go in with your skincare and prep properly beforehand. So when I applied this with both the brush and my hands, it goes on so smoothly, and I think when you do have a matte finish, it tends to be a little bit easier, kind kind of has that silicone feel to it. Not in a terrible, like over silicone-y way, but just that it helps kind of like spread very quickly and easily, which is one thing that I really do like about this. As far as wear, I tend to feel like when it is a matte or like more natural to matte finish, you do get a little bit better wear time, but also sometimes when it starts to wear off, you can notice that there's a little bit of a difference between where the makeup is and where your skin is. So kind of keep that in mind. It's not going to be like a long-lasting matte foundation, but it does wear pretty well just because it's not slipping and sliding everywhere. But again, it might highlight some texture. Honestly, I haven't seen any texture under this eye, which is where I saw it with the Rare Beauty. So it does a pretty good job of covering texture or dry patches. Overall, thrilled about this one, and I do like the light shade on me. I think it's a really great winter shade. All right, guys, we did it. That was a lot of tinted moisturizers on my poor face, but I took a break in the middle and I'm alive. So I hope that was useful for you. I feel like even for me, it was super useful, and it makes me kind of want to go, and I think I'm going to do this after I film. I'm going to organize my skin tints by my like shades, because I have some that are very light that are good for the winter, and then some that are very dark. And for me, I can kind of work better when I know what shade I'm looking at, because I do have some that are way too tan for me. But that's not part of this video. What I wanted to go through now is, out of the 8 that I reviewed, I want to tell you my top 4. I'm going to do 4 because I do find that there are 4 that are head and shoulders above the others. So without further ado, I'm going to go through them. And they are these 4. So I'm going to kind of go by skin type, starting with if you have more dry to normal skin. I think if you have more dry to normal skin, either of these are going to be perfect. This is the Bare Minerals. This is the Complexion Rescue. I think if you want a little bit more of a sheer coverage and you have dry skin, this is the one for you. If you have a little bit more normal, even dry or oily, but you want a little bit more coverage and something that's more buildable, absolutely go with the Laura Mercier. If you have more oily skin, I would say check out that oil-free one. I think there's going to be something in their range that will work for all skin types. So on the more dry side, either of these are just perfect. They're so easy. They have enough shades that you can kind of find something. And I feel like they're very flexible and you can get the coverage that you want from either. If you have more normal to oily skin, I think this goes without saying, but either of these are going to be my choice. This is the Chanel Vitalumière Aqua, and then this is the Tarte Sugar Rush Skin Treat. If you want a matte coverage or finish, definitely go with the Skin Treat. It's kind of not talked about. I feel like nobody talks about it, and maybe it's because it's meant for like a younger audience, but whatever, like it still works. I have it on right now. I put a little bit of blush over top and it just is so nice. It doesn't feel like I have anything on my skin, and it looks very natural for a matte finish. But if you want something that's a little bit bougier, but also I think has that like absolutely perfect finish, the lit from within glow, it's gonna be the Vitalumière Aqua. This one I think could work on all skin types, and if I'm gonna have to choose out of the 4 of my top 4, I would go with this one because it's the most flexible. You can get sheer coverage, you can build it up, you can make it glowier by adding something underneath like your moisturizer, or you can have it a little bit more matte. Some of the others, it's gonna be harder to kind of manipulate the finish, but this one you can really manipulate it. So I do think it is quite pricey, but every time I wear this, I get compliments, and I am looking at my skin all day being like, damn, what's she wearing? Even though I know. So these 4 are my top favorites. I will list everything below. I will list all of the shades. I will list everything that I think you need. And if you did enjoy this, definitely give it a big old thumbs up because it's gonna help, and get ready for the full high coverage. It's not gonna be that full coverage, but more coverage than we did today. And don't forget to subscribe to get that video when it comes out. All right, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.